So yeah, folks, what I'm going to be talking about today is how much Vite can help you speed up your development workflow. And I just wonder, like, how many people in here already make use of Vite in their day-to-day? All right, so it's a vast majority. And how many people are using Vue CLI and have plans of moving to Vite sometime soon? Awesome. And who haven't had the opportunity to use Vite yet? Okay, so the way I've organized this talk is hopefully that's going to provide value to all three groups, because I'm not going to be diving really deep on the technical side in any areas, while also I'm going to be providing some pretty cool things that honestly impress me about Vite, that hopefully, even if you are using Vite in your day-to-day, maybe you haven't heard of those. So I'm going to be covering that too. Right. So yes, my name is Felipe Flor, and I included the Brazilian flag there because yes, I've moved from Brazil to Canada. And I included this picture over here because I'm pretty happy to say that I'm the proud owner of the VueConf from VueConf 2019. There was this competition where anybody could participate, and my submission got first place. So I was awarded with the VueConf, and I cherish to this day. So it's what an amazing gift. And you can also see my friend Adam. The guy is a total wizard of coding and has taught me so much about Tailwind. So just wanted to give kudos to him too. The three of us, because I'm including the VueConf there as well, we're all members of Vehicle. So we are a web development consultancy company based in Canada. We specialize in web and mobile solutions. You might have seen our booth over there. So if you want to check us out, please don't hesitate to go there. We would love to talk to you as well. And yes, I am truly honored to be standing here today and having this opportunity to give something back to our community that has done so much for me already. It's truly a dream come true. And especially because talking about Vite, which is a thing that I'm pretty pumped about, is honestly, yeah, it is a dream come true. And I really appreciate this opportunity. Another thing that I want to point out as well is that don't see this presentation as if it's going to come from a perspective of someone who is an expert to build tools, because that's not who I am. See this as like an eager web developer that really enjoys Vite and uses Vite a lot, and he just wants to share a little bit of why he likes it. Okay? And yeah, so how I'm going to be doing this? First, I'm going to start by explaining what is Vite, and I'm going to compare with some alternatives out there. Then I'm going to go towards explaining different features that I really liked about it. And hopefully by the time that chapter 2 is done, you're going to be pumped and you want to try Vite out. So I included a third chapter in here where I'm going to be explaining how you can make use of Vite, be it in a brand new project, or I'm going to include a section where I'm going to convert a Vue CLI project to make use of Vite. All right, so it's a lot of things to cover, and I only have 30 minutes, so I need to get going. Okay, so what is Vite? And Vite is effectively a build tool. And I like to compare it to, for example, Webpack or Parcel. And the whole idea is that it provides a series of resources of automation for you. So, for example, you can minify your code. You can run a web server for you to apply it in development. And one of the things that I like about Vite is that it has this very strong focus on being easy to use and speed. Like, speed is literally in the name. You might have heard of this before, but the name Vite comes from the French word for quick or fast. And we employ some different strategies in here to achieve those incredibly fast speeds. One of those is a different strategy when we're trying to serve for development. A more conventional approach that you might have seen when you're talking about Webpack plus Webpack Dev Server would be to bundle up your entire code base before serving to the browser. But what Vite does is it leverages the fact that modern browsers nowadays know how to understand ECMAScript modules themselves. So we can bypass this extra transformation step of bundling our application and instead we can just do some minimal bundling. There is some pre-optimization bundles. I'm not going to go into that detail. But most of the heavy lifting is done by serving ES modules directly to the browser. So this is lightning fast. I'm going to include a slide here where I'm going to compare with Webpack, and you're going to be able to see the difference. Of course, serving ES modules directly to the browser adds some HTTP overhead, which isn't a big deal if your server is in the same computer as your client, which is the case for development. But when we're talking about production, this HTTP overhead would be detrimental. So that's why Vite follows a totally different strategy for production builds that is that more conventional of bundling up your entire code base into a few files. So having these two approaches, depending on what you want to use it for, is one of the reasons why I really appreciate it. So let's compare it a little bit with Webpack. And the reason why I chose Webpack is because it's a very well-known build tool, and it has an established following. So yes, definitely Webpack is older than Vite. It has been around for over a decade, and it has withstood the test of time, right? Vite, on the other hand, is younger. It has been around since 2020, but already has an immense following behind it. Another thing that I like to differentiate those two, and pardon me, I might be oversimplifying things, but I like to say that there's the number of assumptions that the build tool is making about you is another point of difference here. Vite makes some more assumptions about you, and so Vite assumes that you are a modern developer, and because of this, it comes pre-configured for a lot of things that modern developers care about. Webpack makes fewer assumptions about you. So one of the consequences of that is that for the same project, if you were to compare the configuration file, the Webpack configuration file would be drastically larger than the Vite one, because a lot of the heavy lifting is done for you already through the pre-configurations. Of course, there is a downside. Vite requires you to be using modern JavaScript, while Webpack does not, right? But if you are a modern developer, Vite really works incredibly well for you. Lastly, it's the point that I was covering on the previous slide. Webpack plus Webpack Dev Server requires bundling of your entire code base, even for development, while Vite, for the most part, most of the heavy lifting is done by serving ES modules directly to the browser, so it's so fast. And when I was putting together this slide, I was working on a new version of my portfolio website, and I felt like, hey, maybe this is going to be a good opportunity to compare those two. And what I did is I have the exact same project on both sides. On the left-hand side, it's using Vue CLI, which Vue CLI uses Webpack under the hood. And on the right-hand side, it's going to be Vite. So if I try to restart the website, oh yeah, and full disclosure, I consider doing live coding, but I don't have the guts. So huge respect to people that do it. I pre-recorded videos. So if we start the server over here, you can see that Vue CLI, like Webpack, took 1,500 milliseconds to compile my JavaScript and 80 milliseconds to compile the CSS. It's still pretty fast. Like Vue CLI is an awesome tool as well. But so the site is working pretty fine. That's okay. But how would that compare with Vite? So starting the exact same project using Vite as a build tool, look at almost instantaneous. I couldn't even finish the sentence. And Vite took 170 milliseconds to build everything, right? So we're talking about a difference of 10 times the speed. So this is one of the points that really brings the community together regarding Vite. But I want to argue that personally, like, this speed is not the main selling point of Vite to me, because like you saw that Vue CLI was also pretty fast. What I really like about Vite are all the great features that it brings. And please do keep in mind that for the sake of time's sake, I'm going to be just doing a snack-sized overview of the different features. It's not meant to be an in-depth course of them. But yes, if you do want to talk more about those, I would love to talk with you. Like I'm going to be here all day, so please reach out. But yeah, it's going to be just like tiny bits of each feature. So what are some things that Vite brings right out of the box that I absolutely love? hot module replacement is definitely one of those. And if you don't know what hot module replacement is, it's what allows you to see immediately the result of the changes in your code base. Like you do some change in the code base and that gets immediately reflected in the browser. It's pretty fast. Another thing as well is that Vite comes pre-configured to support PostCSS right out of the box. So for example, very popular PostCSS plugin would be Auto Prefixer. You can just install Auto Prefixer directly. You don't have to worry about loaders and add it to your PostCSS configuration and you're good to go. Likewise, if you're still using CSS precompilers, the same applies. You don't need to worry about CSS precompiler loaders. You can just install, let's say, Sass or less and start using it, and Vite is going to handle that for you. And a third point is, and people mentioned this morning, and I totally agree, I strongly recommend you to make use of TypeScript in your code base. It drastically reduces the chances of bugs in your project and increases maintainability. And Vite comes pre-configured to support TypeScript transpilation. And I was very careful to mention transpilation because let me just expose you one thing real quick. So let's go back to that project. And yes, I do like Disney music, by the way, but that's not the point of the talk. But like I included the project card in here, and this is a Vue 3 project. And this project card component is meant to be a reusable card. I provide a detail of a side project that I have, and it gets rendered as a project card. And notice that it takes a prop of title, okay? And if you go to the definition, title is a required prop of type string. Just a quick segue, notice that I'm using TypeScript, so it's Vue 3 TypeScript, but if you were to check my Vite configuration file, there is no mention of TypeScript in here. So I just want to drive that point that TypeScript support is right out of the box. But let's go back to the component. All right, so it takes a prop of title, and title is meant to be of type string. So what would happen if I go back to where this component is being used, and if I were to provide another value to the title? So let's provide something else there. As soon as I save, hot module replacement has immediately updated the value in the browser. Okay, so it's that instantaneous feedback loop is one of the things that Vite brings to us right out of the box. But the main reason why I decided to show this part of it here is what would happen if I were to provide a prop that violates the type safety rules that I have established. For example, an array of numbers. Okay, so notice this, folks. Vite is not complaining, okay? So all it's going on right now is my application is rendering the array syntax as regular text, but on the Vite side, everything is fine and dandy. So Vite is not performing type checks for me, but notice that my IDE is complaining. My IDE detected that I'm violating the type safety rules that I've established, and it's saying that an array of numbers cannot be assigned to a prop of type string. This is exactly one of the assumptions that the Vite team is making about us. They assume we are modern developers with modern tools, and those tools that we have available to us are already providing the type safety that we need. So there is a need for Vite to have this additional overhead of performing the type checks for us, right? So Vite can focus more on speed. Another point that I want to drive as well is that even if you don't want to rely on your IDE, there are CLI tools, like for example, for Vue projects, Vue.js is amazing to perform type checks for you. And a classic pattern is for you to do the Vue.js check before building for production. So by having this in here, as soon as I try to build my application for production, I'm going to get an error. And Vue.js is going to tell me exactly what's the reason. But what if that's not enough? Like, what if you really want Vite to be performing type checks for you? Is there anything that you can do about this? And the answer is yes. You're going to be seeing this pattern showing up over and over again, where Vite is going to make some assumptions about you, but if you want to deviate from those assumptions, you can, and it's going to be like a one-liner change in your configuration file, or maybe adding one plugin to the project. To get Vite to perform type checks for me, all I need to do is install one plugin. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to install one of the recommended plugins by the community, which is the Vite plugin checker. It's an amazing plugin. I don't know if people involved with the Vite plugin checker are here, but I want to give a shout out because it's pretty good. So installing the Vite plugin checker, once it's installed, all I need to do is go to my Vite configuration and add it to my array of plugins. And please note that Vite checker has a bunch of different options to support, including running Vue.js C for me. So let's enable the flag to run Vue.js C. And that's it. So this is enough for us to have type checks. So if I restart my server, look at that. Now we get a very nice error message showing up on the browser that tells me that I'm violating my type safety rules. Just like that. And it even has a link that I can click that takes me exactly to the problematic point in the code base. So it's just like that, folks. They make some assumptions about us, but if you want to add additional features, it doesn't take long. This is one of the reasons why I like Vite. So as soon as I fix the error and I save, there you go. The error is gone. So just to recap, when we're talking about TypeScript and Vite, yes, transpilation is supported right out of the box, but Vite will not be performing type checks for you by default. But if you want to enable that, you can. And one of the ways you can do this is by enabling the Vite plugin checker in your project. And that's it. All right, so this is it for the TypeScript area. I want to talk about some other features as well, like code splitting. And if you haven't heard of code splitting, the concept is effectively, instead of serving your entire JavaScript in this example, like as one giant file, you can split it into smaller chunks. And the concept of code splitting usually goes hand in hand together with another concept called lazy loading. And the idea is you split your code into smaller chunks, and you only require the client to download specific chunks as they're actually required, okay? So how do you do code splitting with Vite? You just use import as a function. That's it. So if you use dynamic import, Vite is going to see what module you're trying to import, and we will automatically extract that into a chunk that contains that part of the information. So let me demonstrate. A classic use case for lazy loading and code splitting is when we're talking about routes. So right here on the left-hand side, I'm not doing any code splitting at all. When the consequence of this is that regardless of where the user is, they will have to download all the pages in my app. They are immediately going to download the home component, page A component, page B component, right? But if I want them to only download those components as they are trying to access the respective page that they represent, I can just do this. So look at the change. I'm no longer importing at the very top of the project. I'm using import as a function on the route definition itself. So routing is the classic example for code splitting, but I want to clarify that you can actually do this with anything. So I wanted to show an example beyond beyond routers, right? So in here, I have like some heavy module, and I want to run a function from this module and alert the output of that function to the user. Right now, some heavy module is always being downloaded, right? But if I do the change to be this, so pay attention to the alert my results function. I'm going to simply import the some heavy module now inside of the alert results function. And Vite is going to detect that the some heavy module is being dynamically imported and is going to extract that into its own chunk. And Vue is only going to force the user to lazy load that when they click on the button. Doing code splitting and lazy loading can strongly drastic performance benefits for large-scale apps. So I strongly recommend getting comfortable with those. Talking about imports, another thing that I really appreciate that Vite brings to the table is this resource called Glob import. And what it is, it's a resource that allows you to import multiple modules in one go. So I wanted to demonstrate an example. So I've put together a component that would render inline SVGs for me. So I would pass the name of the SVG and I would render that. And as part of the implementation, I'm importing all the SVGs this component is meant to support. into a module collection called SVGs available. So please note that all I had to do was use import.meta.glob. And then the idea is that this component would be able to be used like this, where you just add the component to your template, you pass the name of the SVG, and now it's going to render that SVG as an inline SVG. The whole point of this is because inline SVGs are awesome, but if you're not doing something like this, then it can really add too much clutter to your code base. So that's one alternative to do that. I do want to point out though that you actually don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you are working on a Vue project and you want to use inline SVGs, there is a plugin for that. So big shout out to the team behind Vite SVG Loader. It's a pretty awesome plugin and it's very easy to use. You just need to install it, add it to your array of plugins in your Vite configuration file. And just like that, if you import, you can just import your SVG normally and use it as a Vue component. And it's gonna be an inline SVG. So you get all the benefits of inline SVGs while still keeping your code base clean. All right, so yes, there are so many niche plugins. We covered a couple of them, like inline SVGs, type checking, supporting specific frameworks like Vue. But folks, there are so many more. Like I actually, I had a couple of more to mention. I could do like a whole hour just of plugins that I like. But I do need to move on. One thing that I want to mention is there is this officially curated lists of Vite-related resources called Awesome Vite. I included the link over here, but if you Google Awesome Vite, is the first result as well. It's awesome. And there is a whole section there for plugins as well. And every single plugin that I've mentioned today is in that list as well. All right, so hopefully by now you're kind of like, hey, Vite looks pretty cool. I want to try that out. So how do we do this? To create a new project, all you need to do is use the boilerplate wizard. So if you do pnpm create Vite, that's going to start the wizard. And they're going to ask for the project name. You can give it there. Then it's going to ask what framework you want to use. And I mean, it's obviously going to be Vue. So just going to pick Vue in here. And then whether or not you want to use TypeScript. That's it, folks. We have a brand new Vue 3 TypeScript project ready to go with Vite pre-configured for it. And I do want to hit on a specific point. Take a look at this screenshot. The boilerplate wizard was asking me which framework I want to use. And this is very important, folks, because we might be inclined to believe that Vite was made specifically for Vue.js because Evan knew the person behind the creation of Vite happens to be the person behind the creation of Vue. But this is not the case, folks. Evan New and the Vite team have made a very active decision of making Vite completely framework agnostic. So yes, it works amazing for your Vue projects, but it's also an amazing build tool for your React projects as well, or your vanilla JavaScript projects. Right, and how about converting existing projects to use Vite? There are a couple of things that I think you need to consider before following this decision, and I included them in this slide over here. So one is that Vite requires modern versions of Node, and we all have worked on legacy projects, and I know that sometimes the reality is that the project is running on an older version of Node. So you and your team need to do that investigation. Like, do you need to update Node before even considering bringing Vite, right? Another thing as well is that Vite targets modern browsers. All the evergreen browsers and all the imported browsers are fully supported. But if for some reason your product needs to be supported by some older legacy browsers, then you do need to do an additional investigation before figuring out whether or not Vite is going to be a good decision for the team at this point. But I do want to point out that there is a plugin called Vite Plugin Legacy that might help you out there. So it's just it's an investigation that you're going to need to do with your team. Furthermore, it's other integrations as well. Maybe your build tool is making use of some specific third-party resources that don't immediately translate in the Vite space. So you also need to take that into account. But let's assume that you and your team looked over this and you're like, yes, I want to migrate to Vite. So because this is a VueConf, I thought it would be nice to include a Vue CLI into Vite tutorial in here. So it's going to be a few minutes, but I think it's going to be interesting. To do this demonstration, I've spun up a Vue CLI project that has Vue 3, it has Vue Router, it has Vuex, it has CSS precompilers, and it has Typescript. So like a bunch of Pokemons there. And we're going to convert this project to use Vite. So the first thing we're going to do is get rid of everything related to the Vue CLI. We don't need those anymore. Also, Vite supports CSS precompilers right out of the box. We don't need to worry about loaders at all. Okay, next, we're going to, obviously install Vite, but we also need to install the plugin that is going to allow Vite to understand the syntax of Vue 3. So it's the @vite.js /plugin-vue. So once those are installed, we can update our scripts. If you want to serve a development server, you just need to run the Vite command. And if you want to bundle for production, you need to run the Vite build command. Next, to make use of the plugin, we need to create a Vite config file. And all this config file needs to do is export the return of the defined config function, which has a key in there called plugins. So it's just an array of all the plugins you want to use. In this case, we only have the Vue plugin. Okay, another thing that the Vue CLI does for us though, is it sets up path aliasing where your @ represents the source folder, right? So we need to do this as well. So all you need to do is create this resolve alias configuration in your Vite config and point to the source folder. Past me is taking a while, but it's almost done. All right, so this is it for our Vite configuration, folks. What we need to do now is that by default, Vite assumes your index.html file is located at the root of the project. So I'm going to move it there as well. And we are no longer using Webpack, so I'm going to get rid of all the different Webpack options. And I'm just going to replace them for hard-coded values for now. And once this is done, another thing that you're going to need to do is include a script tag of type module that points to the entry point of your app, of the JavaScript of your app, right? So in this case, it's going to be the main.js file that is located in my source folder. Because as you can see, it's creating the Vue app there. And we are almost done. Another thing that you need to take into consideration is that the way you reach out for environment variables with Vite is no longer by using process.env, but instead, you're going to be making use of import.meta.env. And right now, Typescript doesn't know that my meta object has an env key in it. And for me to allow Typescript to know about this, I just need to go to my tsconfig and add to my types array, I can add vite/client. And just like that, I have full IntelliSense over the meta object, including the different helpers, like Glob import that we covered a few minutes ago. So yes, you can go back to reference the base URL in there. And that's pretty much it. Like we don't need to have this Webpack chunk name definition because Vite have very sensible defaults for the names of the chunks. You can configure how you want to organize your chunks. I'm not going to go over this today, but the defaults are amazing already. And just like that, folks, this is it. We should be able now to start our project. 160 milliseconds was all it took, and it's working fine. So we converted a Vue CLI project to Vite. A point that I want to highlight as well is that if your project is running on Vue 2, everything that I've said still applies. The only difference that you need to account for is the plugin you're going to be installing, okay? So if it's a Vue 2 project, just add the number 2 to the name of the plugin. I want to give a huge shout out, by the way, to Daniel Kelly. He presented this morning as well, and his articles are as good as his talk on the morning. The guy is awesome. So I strongly recommend checking out his article on how to migrate from Vue CLI to Vite. It was an amazing read, and the Vue School is an amazing resource there. All right, folks. So I've talked a lot and still shaking a little bit, but hopefully, why do I like Vite? For a couple of reasons. One, Vite is built around modern JavaScript, and I am a developer that makes use of modern resources. And because of that, Vite comes heavily pre-configured for things I care about. So it drastically reduces the amount of work that I need to do before I can actually get my work done. You know what I mean? So it saves time there. And if I do want to deviate from the pre-configured values, I can either flip a configuration in my Vite config or maybe add an additional plugin. We have a very strong community behind this, producing a lot of very valuable plugins for us to use. Furthermore, hot module replacement, honestly, I cannot go back to not having that. Having instantaneous feedback loops over your change in the code base is God-given. So I really appreciate that Vite comes with hot module replacement right out of the box. And lastly, yes, like our community is amazing, folks. Like there are so many interesting articles. And as you can see, like in this conference itself, the people just sharing their knowledge is, I don't know, I haven't seen anybody that is mean, you know, like people are just so cool. and the plugins are pretty awesome. So yeah, so I really hope that whatever I shared today is going to be able to help you in your projects, be them with Vue or any other type of framework. And yes, thank you so much for having me. And I hope we can continue to learn and grow together. Thank you.